Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. In this video, we are going to discuss silver mining and its history in Mexico and why it's so important. So let's explore this fascinating topic. Silver mining. It's been done throughout several millennia, ever since silver became a commodity as money in the old world. But since the discovery of the New World, it went into overdrive. And Mexico is at the heart of that. So I think it's important for those of us who accumulate this metal have an understanding of what that means and the history behind it, and why Mexican silver, I believe, is so special. We're going to take a look at this from the one of the largest silver mining companies in the world, who actually operates a lot in Mexico, and that's First Majestic. They have outlined a write-up on this, and we're going to reference that. The history of commercial mining in Mexico dates back at least over 500 years. Today, Mexico continues to stand out as one of the world's largest producers of silver. It is known as a major destination for companies seeking mineral exploration. Non-commercial mining preceded the arrival of the Spaniards. Pre-Columbian population held gold, silver, and other metals in high esteem. And then we had Spain enter into the picture, coming from Europeans. You had Hernan Cortez. He came into including Mexico, and that in 1521, which was 300 years before Mexican independence. During the Spanish conquest, the original inhabitants of the territories of Mexico were forcibly introduced to an unfamiliar world and economic marketplace. The exploitation of metals established a hierarchy between the Spanish conquerors and the native populations, and also resulted in a mixed race of Spanish and Mexican Indians. Colonial mining began when European techniques and productions were introduced into the New World to satisfy insatiable European demand for metals. Within a matter of years, gold and silver started to flow into the Spanish treasury from Mexican mines. During the next 300 years of Spanish rule, many other minerals were extracted from the ground, such as copper, coal, lead, and iron. The bedrock deposits of the great silver-gold vein system of the Veta Madre in Guanajuato were discovered in the year 1550 and unearthed almost immediately after that. El Oro, located near Mexico City, one of the leading gold districts, was discovered in 1521, developed to a great extent by 1530, and mined regularly, with some interruptions, for about 400 years. During this period, over 5 million ounces of gold was extracted. During the first American silver boom from 1570s to the 1630s, the Mexican industry was overshadowed by the mines of Upper Peru, which supplied Spain with 65% of its registered bullion imports into the New World. By the 18th century, however, Mexico again emerged as the world's chief producer of silver. From the late 16th century until the 1870s, silver was Mexico's chief export. That's right, this metal was the chief export of Mexico during that period. It amounted to more than 70% of the total exports out of the country. During this early period of mining in Central America, mining techniques were very precarious and amounted to slave labor in many cases. Miners faced several dangerous problems, such as deep, narrow shafts, longer, narrow tunnels, wooden ladders and supports, limited-use tools, which amounted to very hard labor, underground flooding, inadequate ventilation systems, and what amounted to a generally unsafe work environment. The seeds of economic modernization began to be laid after the restored republic in 1867 through 1876. President Benito Juarez, who was president from 1857 to 1872, sought to attract foreign capital to finance Mexico's economic modernization. His government revised the tax and tariff structure to revitalize the mining industry. It had improved the transportation and communications infrastructure to allow further development and production of the country's natural resources. In the late 19th century, the mining industry in Mexico expanded. General Diaz effectively governed Mexico until the Revolution of 1910, serving as president from 1877 to 1880 and from 1884 to 1911. It was during this period that a new Mexico emerged. Diaz established order and a workable government. Civil war ceased and banditry disappeared from the countryside. Then we had foreign investment rushing in to take advantage of the new political and economic climates. In 1884 and 1892, the Mexican mining law was reformed, integrating the most liberal codes, which changed the old Spanish mining code, resulting in the granting of subsoil ownership, mineral rights to landowners. The consequences of these changes broke the old dominance of Spaniards and European mining owners, allowing for new North American-based companies to begin forming in Mexico. This revived mining and also created the discovery of major oil fields. Exports and national income increased, and new industries dotted the countryside. Under the regime of President Porfirio Diaz, with subsoil ownership now allowed, several mining concessions of certain mines located within the Sierra de Peñoles in the state of Durango resulted in Compañía Mineral de Peñoles being founded in 1887. Even though an economic downturn began in the early 1900s in Mexico due to nervous investors wary of the nationalization of subsoil rights, several mergers, acquisitions, and fusions and other mining companies were taking place between 1890 and 1960. The Revolution of 1910 paved the way for a new Mexican Constitution signed into law in 1917, which included Article 27, allowing Mexico to regain direct control of mineral resources. Later, in 1934, the government limited the size of the mining concessions, promoted the formation of cooperatives, and created the Commission of Mining Promotion. Despite widespread land and reform and nationalization of the country's basic industries being undertaken during the 1930s, nationalization of the railroads in 1929 and through 1930, and nationalization of the petroleum industry in 1938, mining was not affected. As a result of the reform, consolidation of mining in Mexico continued, with several Mexican industrialists such as Raúl Balieres and Jorge Layera purchased the majority of stock from shareholders from Great Britain, the USA, Germany, and forming what is known today as Industrias Peñoles and Grupo Mexico. Legislative changes to Article 27 again took place in February 1961 with the enactment of the Constitution of the Exploration and Treatment of Mineral Resources, which effectively nationalized the mining industry by stipulating a mandatory minimum 51% Mexican ownership of mining projects. Such regulations forced foreign investors to sell their mining interest and reincorporate themselves as Mexican companies. The term of President Luis Echeverría Alvarez in the early 1970s was marked with economic instability and political unrest. His successor, President Jose López Portillo, exploited the newly founded oil reserves, which entered into Mexico into a period of economic prosperity. However, the decline of the world oil market in the 1980s plunged Mexico into a serious economic crisis. In 1982, Mexico's economy was on the verge of collapse. The governments imposed vast austerity measures. In 1985, signed with foreign creditors the first stage of a 14-year debt restructuring plan. In September 1985, the Mexican economy suffered an additional setback, with earthquakes severely damaged the capital, killing and injuring thousands. Although inflation accelerated and the foreign debt grew, economic prospects began to brighten as oil prices began to recover in 1987. In 1985 was probably the most of these particular libertads minted. Many of these are very common now. You can find them, the old school libertads that are out there, minted in that year. Continuing on here with mining in Mexico and how it has changed over the years. In December 1990, further legislative changes were made, resulting in a new liberal political framework with more transparent definitions for the scope of power of government authorities and eliminating many of the obligations and procedures required previously for ownership of mining concessions. In addition, foreign capital was finally allowed to participate in 100% ownership of mining properties once incorporated within a Mexican corporation. These changes allowed for the country's economic climate to begin improving once again. In 1993, Nafta, the North American Free Trade Agreement, was signed by Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., resulting in an explosion of investment in Mexico. The mining industry was one of the big recipients of this foreign investment. Since 2002, the improvement in metal prices has also helped to further increase the investment in mining in Mexico. As a result of a favorable geological environment, supportive mining regulations, and current metal prices, Mexico has received a substantial percentage of the worldwide investment in mining. Mexico's mining output has reached levels never seen before. Its gold production in 2010 was 2.7% of world production, while silver was 19% and copper was 2% of total world production. So that's very fascinating to see how the mining history and the behind the scenes of kind of what has happened in Mexico in terms of mining. And you can see that Mexico produces very large amounts of silver for the world. And as best represented, that's what makes these particular pieces so special. The 1 onza pieces here. And in Mexico, these things are literally traded as money, even though they don't have a denomination on them. I believe they are recognized and sanctioned as money, because really that's what silver is. And so when you think about it, the term peso means weight, and there is weight to these. It happens to be 1 ounce, by the way. And it should be noted that they have these particular pieces here do have a coin turn. And even though there's no monetary denomination on these, the 1 onza designation essentially serves as that. Plata pura, meaning pure silver there in Spanish. And it is 3/9 fine. And even though it doesn't have that 4/9 purity, I've not seen Mexican silver with 4/9 purity. We know that Mexican silver is special. It's special because of the history behind it and how much of it has been discovered, how much of it has been mined and minted throughout the years at the Western Hemisphere's oldest mint. Yes, indeed. The oldest mint, represented by this mint mark here, Moneda de Mexico. All right, very good. The Mexican mint. Very cool indeed. So there you have it. The history of mining in Mexico. So post your thoughts below. Do you have any other interesting facts to share about Mexican silver and what makes it special? It is special indeed. And very happy to own a little bit of Mexican silver. How about you? Do you have any Mexican coins, bullion, such as libertads, and the various different weights and styles that have occurred throughout history here? Mexican silver. Quite a fascinating history it serves. Hope you enjoyed this video. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for watching and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.